All right, so we're back, and this, I guess, is gonna kind of be a merry holidays thing. So we'll start with Happy Christmas, Merry Yule, Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Saturnalia.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Saturnalia.
You're welcome.
Um, and yeah, I think that covers all the real ones. So that being said, it's been almost 2 weeks, and man, what a time it's been.
Indeed.
So, saying all that, we might be expecting Steve to join us shortly. So,
Very possibly.
fingers crossed on that one. And I guess we should start out with what the biggest news of the day is, and something that we've actually been talking about.
Oh boy.
Omicron. It's here, and it's the scariest thing ever. Except,
Omicron Prime.
indeed. But the problem with Omicron is the numbers and the science got out before the hype train
So
could get started.
the funny thing is, we actually still have a lot of unknowns on it.
We do. We do
But
indeed.
the stuff we do know currently suggests that it is generally milder, much more milder among people who are vaccinated who get breakthrough. Even though the major downside there is it does tend to have significant number of breakthroughs. So it is immune evading, but it's fairly mild when it gets through a vaccine, fine, or prior immunity of any kind. So you've already gotten COVID before. For those who are not vaccinated, who've never had an infection, etc., who are basically pristine petri dishes, um, it also still seems to hit pretty mild
Yeah.
in that population.
Pretty
Although
well tolerated there.
we don't have fantastic numbers to make sweeping conclusions here. We just have what we know from the few cases that have already come around, or the one province in South Africa that
Yeah.
got nailed by this thing.
Yeah. They are doing excellent tracking down there though, and bless them for doing it because it's very
Well,
revealing and it's
yeah,
it's very heartening, honestly.
you got to remember South Africa is basically like the AIDS hub of the continent. They know what's going on in their country, and in most of the rest of the countries in Africa. Um, so when they got asked, "Hey, can you sequence this stuff?" they were on top of it because that's what they do. They have a fantastic infrastructure for doing that stuff down there.
But the initial numbers on that, their hospitalization rate is 91% lower in this Omicron wave that they're dealing with.
So that's a tricky number. I would not quote that.
Well, I'm quoting Bloomberg.
So when you say percent lower, the problem is you're talking about the relative drop between different surges, and the surge capacity might also be different between different waves. So the percent fill of surge capacity might be lower, but the surge capacity that might be available might be also lower.
Well, then I
So
guess I should quote directly
it's a
here.
bad thing to quote.
I should quote the paragraph directly then to make it more clear. Only 1.7% of the identified COVID 19 cases were admitted to hospital in the second week of infections of the fourth
Okay,
wave, compared to 19% in the same week of the third
so
Delta
that's
wave.
hospitalization. Okay, so
So it's
hospitalization
based on
versus yeah.
on not on a hard number, but on scaling numbers. So that's roughly accurate then. But
All right.
either way,
So
I'll have a link to that
that's
Bloomberg
a better
article
way to
too as
quote it.
well.
Definitely
And
a better way to quote it right there.
yeah, the article it's I've got it linked from 2 days ago. If you want to go back and look in the show ideas.
Okay. Oh man.
But that being said, we have now, as of earlier today, let me see, I'll have to get the exact numbers, but we're at 7 deaths worldwide with Omicron. No
Confirmed.
one yet has been bold enough to say from Omicron, but these are people that
Well,
are
so here's the
infected.
thing. When you say here's something I should bring up right now. When you say someone dies, it's really rare that they're going to die of, say, the disease. They're going to die of organ failure. Just for instance, how do most old people die? We don't list old
Well,
age as a cause of death, do we? No.
actually, I think
What's
so.
what's the leading cause of death in the country? Always.
Isn't it heart disease?
It's heart disease. So just to make that clear for you, a large amount of heart disease deaths are they were old.
I mean, you're not trying
But you
to
know,
make a connection here between something that we haven't really
no,
talked about, are you?
no. But this is straightforward and simple. This is a larger scale, larger scope topic. The vast majority of death that you're going to find doesn't matter if it's from infectious disease of one variety or the other. Remember, we talked about causes of death that are put on a form. It's not one cause of death; it's multiple, and the interpretation is to be drawn up later from statistics. When you add up all causes of death, you should not get 100%. You should get much more than 100%.
Fair enough, but I mean, we still have yet to have anyone bold enough to say that these people died from the disease. And Boris Johnson himself, you'd figure if
I
he's
don't
going
know.
to try and gin up this much fear that they are, and I mean, you can't deny that they are not
So
spreading fear.
the major concern that I have over Omicron is not necessarily going to be the wave coming in. Now, hospital overflow might be a major problem, but and it's going to crowd out other things. Things like traffic accidents are going to be, if you don't get in on triage from a traffic accident because there's 150 people with COVID in front of you, that's a problem for you, the guy who just got hit by some other car. Um,
Well, but then
but the
again,
major
I mean,
concern I have is that
that's what
again,
triage is
people are
for. Let's be honest.
right. But again, my major concern is not that necessarily, but that the people who are going to go out there and just get Omicron because fuck it are going to be active petri dishes brewing up new variants, and we're going to run into another. It's basically how do we end this? And if it continues mutating in the direction that Omicron suggests, which would be great, namely that it's more infectious but less severe.
Well, we can
Um,
also take the most
that's
recent
fine.
Delta
But
as
we've but
well.
we've got to pick a fucking direction. Is my point here at the end of this? We've got to pick a direction, and it's pretty important that we do it. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a major catastrophe on our hands, and we're going to be throwing up our hands, going, "I who the hell could have predicted this?" And it's very obvious already. If we go in and we start breeding these new variants in people who are vaccinated or have previous immunity to more lethal strains, the lethality is not going to go down for the people who are unvaccinated and have never had a prior infection. There's no selective pressure to prevent them from dying because everyone else who's breeding out the new variants has that kind of defense already. So that's the major problem. That's the hazard we have there. That's the catch 22 is we can either let it go or we can vaccinate and then try to get everyone vaccinated or get, everyone who's got some kind of immunity already. We got to pick one of those two avenues. Otherwise, it's not going to go away quickly.
Well, we have a little bit of a problem with vaccinating everyone, though, and that's in the article I just linked, actually, just here in our staff chat, out of the Times. The Sinovac vaccines show basically
Mm-hmm.
no efficacy versus Omicron.
Also, remember, there's three basic measures for efficacy here. There's symptomatic infection, hospitalization, and death. And so Sinovac, I don't expect it to have efficacy on all three categories against anything, but it's a fucking Chinese vaccine. Even though they claim they've vaccinated what 1 billion people already, which is a staggering. Like if you wanted to talk about experimenting on a population and go conspiratorial, there you go. You can complain about that. If that's 1 billion people that you've tried out. But again, I don't like to foster that point of view because medical trials have been done for all of the vaccines that are out there. The experiments have already been done.
Yeah.
Have almost no defense against being infected. Yeah, so this is what I was saying, where there's going to be breakthroughs. Now, the advantage here with the breakthrough with Omicron is that it seems to be fairly mild disease. Fairly mild symptomatic disease, which is great because that means that it's moving in the right direction. But again, if that doesn't track in the same direction with those with no prior immunity protecting them, then that's a bad thing because that means that the lethality for those without any protection is not going away.
Well, we can take some comfort that at least the Omicron variant that's spreading so incredibly rapidly has shown
Right.
that as a trait.
It has, yes. So
And
it's generally milder in both vaccinated and unvaccinated, as in, sorry, those with prior immunity, those with no prior immunity. Generally milder.
that said
But
as
I hope
well,
that stays the same.
the other new Delta, the AY4, I think it was,
Uh-huh.
that one as well. Now, not anywhere to the degree of this one. That one was just a milder COVID. This
Well,
one is basically like kind of a bad cold, as
so
described by most sufferers.
Omicron has a much higher infectivity,
Oh,
transmissibility too.
significantly, significantly. You can,
500% is a lot.
yeah, no, it's
A
spreading
five-fold increase in infectivity.
incredibly rapidly. Like everywhere it touches down, it's just it's like a fire. Which I mean, in and of itself, that that would be scary if we weren't blessed with it being such a boon of a variant.
Well, again, like the hope here is that it basically mutates out of being a major hazard. So remember the coronavirus, and so this is a beta coronavirus. The human infectious members of coronavirus that we are normally exposed to in the common cold family of viral families are alpha coronaviruses. So the beta coronaviruses include SARS, MERS, and SARS-2. SARS and MERS are horrible diseases.
Indeed, they are.
Um, SARS-2, thankfully, COVID-19 is thankfully, generally speaking, less severe than MERS and SARS.
That's true. That's true. That is actually something that we discussed early on in this because this is a
Yeah.
SARS-2 variant.
So the hope here is that Omicron. So SARS we got very lucky with, and it was and I hate to bring up this movie because it was such shit, and which is sad because it was a Shlomalamalon movie. The Happening. You know that part where they say like every once in a while I get a little blip before something major happens. The idea of getting a little bit of red tide in one area before you get a bloom along an entire coast.
Oh, sure,
So
sure.
in that sense, and it's a terrible analogy, but in that sense, SARS did something that we got very lucky with. It basically mutated out of being able to infect humans, which was like the thing. We talked about this several times early on um, last year. So the kind of hope here, the best scenario would be that if we had a variant that arose that kind of spread everywhere that was extremely mild or had mutated out of being able to infect humans or had an extremely low infectivity and transmissibility. The
Yeah.
problem is that all of our selection pressures go against that right now. The mildness part might be possible, but we've got to pick a selection pressure technique to go with, a tactic to go with.
Well, as
You
it looks
Giving
today.
everyone the old vaccine will work right now to get rid of to make everyone get mild Omicron variant infections. And then we could move on from there saying, okay, everyone has the same baseline immunity. Let's then move forward from this. Sure, you could go that route. And that seems to be right what generally politicians are looking at right now, which is basically the dumbass Boris Johnson announcement from last year of let's just go for herd immunity when we didn't have anything to go to herd immunity with. So there's that possibility.
Well, I mean, that's
Companies have
basically
said
what
they have a
Sweden
100
did.
day turnaround time. Companies said they had a 100 day turnaround time for getting new vaccines out, which might be the way to go too.
Well, I
New
mean, that would be
vaccines
the
would protect
reasonable way to
against
go.
Omicron.
But the problem with that is nobody's really doing it.
Well, no,
That
here's
was
the
the
thing: is
plan
that
initially. I mean, we were
the
supposed to
major
keep
problem
getting new
here. Well, yeah, well,
medicines
the
and new
plan was that
vaccines.
the plan was for the booster that Biden decided to push, like verbal diarrhea. The plan for that booster was to be an updated vaccine this year. That
Right.
didn't happen,
Well,
probably
not
largely
only
because
that.
that dipshit decided to suggest
Well,
the
not
same
only
fucking
that too.
vaccine, and they got it
The
easily
initial
out.
plan as well was to explore all efficacious treatments, like your Regeneron, for instance, your maybe
Oh, so here's the thing
ivermectin
about these.
or
Here's the
whatever
thing about these
else.
other treatments. These other treatments imply that you get an infection. And remember, this is pretty important because it keeps coming up as a statistic people harp on. Death is not the only shitty outcome.
Oh no,
I
we've
don't care
actually
what
talked
you're
about that at length, and
right.
that's
It's
actually our that's probably your and my biggest agreement on this, and our largest concern, because the thing itself is,
yeah.
if you take care of yourself in a very in like specific ways, you're probably going to be just fine. But there are things this does above and beyond the initial
So
like flu,
the major
shall we
thing
say?
the major concern I have with touting these other treatments, which is fine because I think they should be available, and I'll get to something on that in a second too that pisses me off. The thing that I worry about with touting these treatments is that people will say, "Oh, well, I'll just be fine. I'll just get the treatment. It'll be over with." And I think that for what it looks like right now, it basically is for 6 out of 7 people. That's probably true. We have no idea what the treatment basis is going to be for the difference. Is it still going to be 1 in 7 people that have lingering symptoms if you have good treatment in a hospital setting? My guess is probably not, but
Well,
it's probably going to be
I'm
lower than
gonna
that. You'll probably be
personally say
probably
on that
better off.
one, in my basic research and personal experience, the faster this gets resolved
Oh, the
in any
better.
given individual, the less likely the long term effects, because it that's
Right.
in
Now, and the
now
other
this
thing
this
is
is
you still have
anecdotal,
2 months.
obviously, just from me,
Yeah.
but from my very basic research and just observation, that seems to be a very frequent occurrence.
Right. And so, but you also got to remember this in the same, in kind with measles. For months after you've had your infection, you are at a significant disadvantage. Your immune system is shot. It's just the way it is. And the joke of it being airborne AIDS has some slight truth to it in that sense. Now, so that's it's the same thing with telling everyone they don't have to wear a mask if they get the vaccine. That was bullshit from the start, and they never should have said that. That was a huge disservice to everybody. So the thing I get pissed off about with this, with these alternative, these treatments for once you have the disease, is you have every lefty shitwit on Twitter come out and say, "Oh yeah, well you should have gotten the vaccine." Or when someone promotes Regeneron and a slew of other types of alternative treatments here, or just treatments, I should say. Again, uh, they'll come out and say, "Oh yeah, but there's just what about the vaccine?" The vaccine doesn't help you once you got the fucking disease. It just doesn't.
And
Period. Never will. Never the case.
well, and that's
You
why
don't
we
give
need to be
someone the
exploring these
vaccine if they got
efficacious
the
treatments,
virus.
though, because
Right. That's my point.
well, and above and
These
beyond that
treatments need
too,
to be available
they
to
need to be available for people who have had the vaccine, because this Omicron wave obviously makes it clear
right.
that these
Yeah.
early vaccines, these leaky vaccines, are not
Well,
really
here's this should be also
so
made clear
good.
is that when people call them leaky vaccines, they were not leaky against the original virus
Oh yeah,
and
no, they were
several
made for the
variants.
wild type and the
They
alpha
were
strain.
they were sterilizing. They gave sterilizing immunity against the virus they were designed for. We should have immediately been updating these vaccines the moment variants that had any kind of immune evasion came about, because that's when they became leaky. And that was when there were major concerns about how do we go about fixing this. Like I said, the same thing is going on with Omicron right now, where I say we got to pick a way to go. Are we going to vaccinate against things like Delta? Like when they do the updated vaccine for Omicron, they better include updates to include Delta, Delta Plus, and whatever the fuck else is going on in that regard. Because if they don't, then all they're doing is encouraging by selection pressure again the revamp of Delta and Delta Plus and the other virus strains. Like it's a bad idea to update a vaccine and not design it to wipe out all of the diseases within the purview that we have available already. That cocktail should include everything. And if it doesn't, then we're going to be asking for. I mean, it's the same shit we talked about a year ago when vaccines were just coming out. They're just being given to old people in homes a year ago. Like we knew that some of these immune evading variants were not going to be covered potentially, and we should have had an updated booster available 3 months ago, but we didn't do it, and we are now. Like we're thumb up the ass waiting for another vaccine.
And that
We know how to get to the point. Like it's not just 100 days. You got to remember that's 100 days until deployment. And deployment takes time. But suppose everybody wanted the vaccine instantly. It would still take at least a month or two to get the vaccines disseminated among the public. But we know that's not going to be the case because people are going to hold out. They're going
oh,
to want to
of
see
course.
how it goes with their friends and neighbors. All the people who are hesitant right now sure aren't going to be going for another vaccine.
Oh yeah, no, and then I mean, you look at all
The
the
anti-vaxxers are still going to be having a field day telling everybody that it's all snake oil and they should listen to them,
that is to
which
say
is
the
the hilarious
actual
opposite of reality.
anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, okay, so not people who are hesitant, have questions, or who are legitimately scared of what's going on and have some level of ignorance that they have not overcome on this subject, and they or have not made or have not made an informed decision on it yet,
Or the people
or
like
have they
Eric
had made an
Clapton,
informed
for
decision.
instance, specifically. He is most certainly not an anti-vaxxer. He was directly injured by them. So, you have
Sure.
to understand these things.
And there's people out there that get, and this is true of this. The problem is that a lot of the people who get, say, a vaccine injury from this would have gotten it from anything else. It's the sad truth of the matter. A lot of the
Maybe.
cases. So, well, here's the thing: if you get any kind of, say, if you get myocarditis or pericarditis from the vaccines, you will get not only will you get a worse version of that from the actual disease, it's because of interferon release. So you would get that same condition if you get a flu shot or you get your 10-year tetanus shot.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
it's
I
just the
thought you
way
were
it
saying
is.
like no, no, no. That's I couldn't say. I mean, because I legitimately don't know. But
Well, it's interferon that is released due to the stimulation of your immune system, and interferon is what causes cardiomyopathy like that. So the myocarditis, so the inflammation of the heart muscle, or pericarditis, the inflammation of the heart lining, the pericardium, the sac that surrounds the heart and holds it in place. Those two types of inflammation occur because interferon, when it is released into the body, pisses off everything. It's kind of its purpose is to interfere with replication of viruses. Uh, but as a part of doing that, it really pisses off muscles and joints. So muscle and joint pain from the flu or from a cold, interferon. Same exact thing from a vaccine. So 10%, at least 10% of cases, only 10% in clinical presentation, so it's more so, of flu come with myocarditis. It's that general chest discomfort on the one side.
hmm,
The vast, vast majority of myocarditis and pericarditis that is a result of interferon is not life threatening, does not require hospitalization, and it's just a bit of chest discomfort. Now, this is not to say that those who go to the hospital are like out of the woods. Oh, they're going, it's not like they're going there because they got punched in the arm and they feel a little bit sad about their life. They're going there because they legitimately have chest pain. So they should be treat. That sucks. I would say this: the same fraction of people who get are on par with the same fraction of people who get a hospitalization from myocarditis or pericarditis from the vaccine for COVID would probably be going to the hospital for the same thing from a flu shot,
that's a
or
possibility.
again from their
But
10-year
let's
tetanus
just
shot.
postulate
Just
for a
for some,
moment
just for
here.
just for some perspective there. That's all.
No, no, that's understandable. But let's just consider for a moment the situation with any number of the European soccer stars, where we're seeing
Okay.
a very pronounced um, number of people having breathing and heart troubles, some to the point of having to
Relative to,
retire
relative to,
relative to their yearly standard.
which is what? So this is the part where I have to ask the question. So
Oh,
the
something like
focus
zero.
and narrative, the focus and narrative in media is the issue here.
No, that's understandable, but I mean, Well, it's basically a
And
zero
that's,
level
and
event that
I
has
believe
is
you.
now a
You know,
non-zero level event.
I can easily see that there's a large. I mean, and so this was brought up by Steve before, where part of the issue with some of this is the failure of administering peon to pinpoint the right part of a shoulder to stab. It's not meant for venous or arterial dissemination into the body. It's meant as an intramuscular shot. It's supposed to go into your muscle tissue and stay there. It's not supposed to enter your circulatory system like readily. It's not supposed to be injected into your a vein or an artery.
Oh, of course. Oh, no,
So
not just of course. Absolutely, it is not.
right, and this has been found to be a major problem when it happens. Your likelihood of having systemic issues goes up significantly if it's allowed to go systemic. So the vast majority of people who are doing these intramuscular injections know what the hell they're doing. But sometimes you get a person who fucks up or just doesn't know what they're doing and then significantly fucks up, like on a lot of people. The same kind of people who would, for instance, mix in saline into a bottle that was already empty, thinking that it was the next dose, and then provide saline injections by accident for hundreds of people. Those kind of idiots should not be practicing any form of medicine whatsoever. Unfortunately, they got drafted in with the people who actually know what the fuck they're doing. So it does not surprise me that, say, a person doing sports medicine might fuck up a vaccination. Because I bet you they didn't go down to the local CVS and get themselves done.
I would certainly imagine not.
Now,
Or
that said, they might have gone to their fancy team doctor who might know what they're doing, or not. I don't know the specifics of it, but I think that there might be something else going on there. And when it comes down to the relative to what, it's the fact that there's this hyper focus on these issues by different interested parties and different aspects of media. So for the people who are looking for, for the hammers looking for a nail, they're probably going to find it. And the question I have is, well, did the size of this nail change from year to year? Because it's certainly a thing that people might be concerned about. Look at how long it took for us to look at dementia from football players.
yeah, that's a fair
People getting
point.
punched,
That's a
people
fair
getting
point.
punch drunk every game.
We've learned quite a lot about concussion in
Now,
just
football
the
over
very
there is
recent
different.
past.
Football over there is different from football over here. So obviously, they should not be getting those kind of heart issues over there. They're not running around that much differently from their normal practice. So I don't know what the relative change, the change in incidence is for these kind of issues with over there, with the sport in general. But that would be what I would recommend people look into is what is the difference in incidence rate for these heart issues, because I know that people do get heart issues. For instance, a good example of this is, so I played lacrosse in college. I played for UF, and one of the stories that goes around is there was a kid who got hit in the chest with someone tried to take a shot at the net and got hit right over the heart, and because he had a heart defect, he died on the spot. But the way it's told is that, you can get hit hard enough with a lacrosse ball in the chest if someone takes a shot that you could die, and always keep your arm up and keep your guard up and so on. And so you have to question, well, how often does that happen where that becomes a rumor? And it's just the once. So obviously, multiple people are having problems. Multiple athletes are having problems. How often were they having problems before relative to now? And how severe are the problems? If so, for instance, people talking about myocarditis a lot, is that where they had some mild chest discomfort, or did they go to the hospital for it?
Well, in most of these cases,
But
they actually have ended up going to the hospital for it.
well,
But
that's
this is also based on the
that's
fact that
buzzword.
they're on the field and
That's
they've,
a fuzzy word, though. Most of
well,
these
I
cases.
mean,
Well, how many of these cases is it like that?
well, I shouldn't say most of these cases. I should say all of these cases that
I
were on
trust
the
you.
field. But
Well, I
again,
trust you. I'm just saying
this is
that, like,
also, kind of different. It's like,
but
if you
these are
have two
also
fighters
superstar
that
athletes.
exactly.
These
So,
well,
they're not
there's a
gonna just
difference in
say, sit there. And
there's a
also there's
difference in
soccer
emphasis.
players specifically who
There's a
are
difference
very
in
particular
emphasis
about
here.
that.
There's two
So
ways to take what I just said there, where I say these are superstar athletes. There's two ways to take it. One way is that yeah, this shouldn't be happening to them. Period. Something bad's going on. The other way is if you get a fucking hangnail, if you're an athlete, you will go see the team doctor. You'll be taken off the
yeah, no,
field.
you will go to the hospital basically over whatever.
Right.
But that being
Like you can
said,
have hurt feelings. You can have hurt feelings like in soccer where you fall down from being,
eh,
some affront from
well,
last night.
that's why I mentioned specifically soccer because they do they can be very dramatic in their injury.
So, like I said, I believe these people are having genuine issues. I question the severity given the amount of focus that is desired to find those issues.
Oh,
Like
that is
there's
a
a lot
fair
of
point, and I will
there's
give
a
you
lot
that.
of
But it
cart
does
before
seem
the
that there
horse on that.
is, and again, this is just anecdotal, but it does seem
Right.
that there is a very noticeable increase in incident.
Sure. And I think that the part of the issue that I have, and you've already mentioned this and agreed as such, is that the attention that is on it is probably part of the issue. The rise in frequency of the news arriving is probably going to be in excess of what the actual excess incidence is. So, basically it boils down to, as with all things in media, take it with a giant dose of salt, um, and hope that somebody actually gets their head screwed on right and does a retrospective a few years later, tell you what actually happened.
Yeah, because we can't really count on
I
Pfizer
just
as
can't
they've.
like wave my arms here. I'm not gonna wave my arms and say, "Don't panic" while shit's exploding behind me. The point is, I
There's
don't think
no.
anybody where the explosions are happening yet.
Yeah, it's a mostly peaceful pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Far be it for me to have a moment like that. I'm only human after all, but like at the same time, uh, no one's turning around to look at the actual problem. None of us has a clue as to exactly how bad it is yet.
Oh, speaking of actual problems and how bad they can be, we have
Mm-hmm.
some news from just about 2 weeks ago out of China.
Two
And,
weeks.
well, this one hasn't gotten any airplay since. And of course it
Okay.
hasn't because it's been obviously buried.
Oh
Evergrande
boy.
had their first default
Oh, yes, not just
on the ninth.
Evergrande, but a subsidiary too.
As well, yes, Kaiser,
Yes, that
another
one.
developer, had a $40 million debt default.
That's it's not a small amount of money. Now the
No.
funny thing is, China decided to help them out. Um,
Oh, of
Evergrande,
course.
not the other one. And I think they found a way to come up with the money to forgive loan payment or whatever. So they got another month out of it. But you can see how Chinese New Year coming up might not be a good time for them.
Oh no! What they're going to do is they're
Because
going to have
that
all
month
their
is
books cooked,
coming
so
up.
that as soon as they do their fiscal quarter one,
Yeah,
they're going to be okay. But day
those
one,
golden
quarter
parachutes,
two, oh my god, it's going to be a fucking bloodbath.
those golden parachutes are going to be unfurling in the coming couple months. I have a feeling.
You think that Japanese bubble economy was a pop heard around the world? Sonny Jim, you haven't seen anything.
Yeah. So this is their 2008 in the U.S. Coming up. This is their subprime mortgage crisis coming up. The difference is that they don't have several layers of bullshit that can collapse. So the collapse is not going to be like you're not going to be able to look up and see the top of the house of cards falling. It's just going to fall out from under your feet.
Yeah, because it's like a house of cards that's built on water and sand.
Well, so I mean, the point here is with the subprime mortgage crisis. What happened was uh, tertiary and quaternary debts. So several layers of debt down the road. Because what you can do is, as if you're operating in that space, what you can do is, or what you could do at least, and I think part of it's made illegal now, is you were able to take debts that you held with, say, a customer as a bank, package them together, and sell the right to the income from those debts off to another entity. So you can sell a debt basically to whom the person paying the money back is going to be paying money to. And then you can trade those like stocks as futures contracts, for example. Uh,
Which is
So when
every bit
you
as monstrous as it sounds. Just to quickly think
yeah,
about it, it's like, oh, that sounds bad. Yes, it's very
so
fucking
here's
bad.
here's what happens when you do something like that. Instead of selling the contract with the person who is paying back money, you sell shares of a pooled set of contracts, and then you can repackage those as futures. And so the whole thing becomes a major mess. So you get these subprime mortgages, meaning people who are likely to default. The subprime nature of the mortgages was hidden, it was obfuscated by this repackaging of the debts into new financial assets to sell off later. And that happened, that basically got to a few tiers deep of that, a few layers of bullshit deep. And then the subprime mortgages started defaulting. And that was a bad news bears for all the people who were holding those toxic assets because all the money that they were hoping to recoup from that disappeared overnight. When they went bankrupt, the future part of that contract could not be fulfilled. And so the price that they were stuck with was now their debt. They now had debt sitting that was they weren't processing out as defaulted debt on their own. They were basically hoping that whoever had purchased a share of it later on was going to get stuck with it. And so,
Or actually,
yeah,
let me pause you for a quick
I
second,
said you could
actually.
look up and see it come down on you, but it was really, I think you could look down and see it fall out from under you.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me pause you, actually, for a quick second and kind of modernize this with something that people will be able to directly remember.
Sure.
It's very different, but in the same way that that hedge fund was gutted in the GameStop fiasco, that's kind of what happened to that mortgage
That's
market.
similar enough. That's
Yeah,
similar
to
enough.
to give an understanding to what kind of level of fuckery
So
this was. It was,
imagine
but where
that
that was just
instead of
one
like,
hedge fund, this was industry wide.
yeah. So imagine instead of just giving permission to loan out your stock, instead the company pooled together stock it would want to loan out and loaned out shares of that as new stock, and that or on the debt of those borrowed shares. So it's again it's similar enough to get the idea across that there, but there's several layers of that shit going on,
Or if you
and so
understand how the fiat nature of
there's
the
time
U.S.
to see that.
currency, it's like another layer of fiat on top of the fiat U.S. currency.
Yeah, right. So the fact is that you were able to like see stuff coming. There was, remember there was like a year of news saying, "Oh God, this is going to happen."
Right.
So with Evergrande, the difference is that this is basically how people own land over there, and how they invest in their future. They don't have retirement accounts; they buy property, or they lease it for 99 years or whatever. Because no one actually owns the land over there; it all belongs to the state.
Right.
So yeah, you lease your land for 99 years, and that is how you plan for your retirement because you can sell your land at the end and live in an apartment. Um, and that's bad news if the company holding your mortgage decides that they're just basically they're going to call on your debt early and you're not going to have it. Like you're not going to have the money to pay off your mortgage if they call in and if they decide to break contract and call it in early. And so there's that kind of counter pressure inside the company. And so if they don't have the assets to pay off and they collapse, your debts get assumed by some entity somewhere. And that entity is not bound by the contract you signed anymore.
And that
So they could
entity,
call in
considering where it
debts,
is bound to be the state. And
right?
the
And so the
Chinese
state could
state
call
is
in a debt.
not known to be friendly at all.
If they call in the debt and you don't have the debt, they take your property. They take your property, you are now homeless. If you're homeless over there, like I don't know if you've seen, like, well, they haven't been allowing a lot of the protests to come out, but I mean, you remember the protests when they wanted workers to go back to work, and early on in the pandemic, about summer of last year, I believe. Um, and the one bridge, so what was it, Guangzhou or whatever, or Guangzhou?
Yeah.
That one bridge, or no, there was a Xinjiang bridge. Not Xinjiang. Fuck me. The one into the Hubei province, the bridge to Wuhan. I'm jumping all over the map of China here, but like that, there was that bridge, that one bridge they were having
I know
riots on
what
it.
you're talking about, but I don't know which
Yeah,
bridge
they were
specifically.
like beating up the police on the bridge, and the two sides, like the one city didn't want the Wuhan people to come over, and they were getting into fist fights on the bridge, the two different populations, which was hilarious at the time because of course the point of the problem was to stay fuck away from each other, otherwise they're going to spread the disease. So it's kind of like people going out and protesting because obviously the disease was not as bad as racism over in the U.S. Same kind of bullshit was being used to incentivize this kind of stuff. But people wanted to go back to work. People didn't want them to show up for work, and that was the tension they had. Same kind of shit is going on over there still. There's still riots going on. They just aren't really publicized well.
Well, that
Um,
is to say, allowed to be.
right. So imagine what happens if a billion people suddenly are told that their property is now back to property of the state again, and they are to live in state housing. Like that would the so China does not want that to happen because about a third of their economy is held up by this one company in that sense. And if Evergrande collapses completely, if it folds, a third of the property in the country goes up like that. Uh, they're looking at mass riots and major problems, the kind that you can't shut it out from the rest of the world.
No, no. A conflagration
And
that
that
can be seen from space.
and that will also topple over into the rest of the economy and the planet. So if you remember how our housing issue became a global recession, Evergrande folding entirely would probably become a global recession. And that whole issue with inflation in this country already, a global recession would be very painful for the United States, let alone the rest of the world.
Well, we've
Like
become so married
everywhere
to
else I
Chinese
know of right now
manufacturing.
is already going through problems. So the way that the dollar's been inflated, a lot of currencies depend on the dollar. Um, I could speak to where my girlfriend lives, etc. Down there, inflation is hitting them really hard, the same way it's hitting us up here. But they don't have any of the safeguards down there that we have in our economy. They don't have the same kind of room for capital to slosh around in other markets. So we get to do all kinds of stuff with debt in the United States that just aren't present in other countries. In other countries, you have to be financially responsible in order to do anything with anything. So you kind of have to have the money already, for instance, to buy a house, or if you want to take a loan from a bank, um, it has to be a pretty sizable loan, and you have to have a pretty sizable income in order for them to start paying attention to you. If you want to own a bank account down there, you have to pay the bank for the bank account
Wow, that's
because
shiesty.
they don't loan out on the same they don't do the same fractional reserve shit that we do up here. Like they have fractional reserve to a certain extent, but it's not anywhere near the 9 to 10 ratio, the 9 parts in 10 ratio that we have here. And well, in looking at the last year or two, that ratio has basically been allowed to be broken. When the Fed decided to put a zero rate for a little bit, what that means is that the banks get loaned out on fractional reserve from the Fed to begin with. That means if when the Fed rate is set to zero, that means that and this is allowed by law, by the way. That means that
Yeah.
every dollar that gets loaned out, like if you don't have any tax on it, basically, if you don't have any, I use tax here not in the government sense, but if you don't have any restraint on loaning out dollars in a fractional reserve system, then $1 in can become infinite dollars out. And when the ratio is allowed to go without any kind of so the interest rate is kind of what determines how far that limit can go besides the law.
Well, a
Uh,
really good way to kind
and if
of
you set your
well, let me
rate
pause you
low,
for a quick second,
zero.
actually, so that I can
Yeah.
make this into something a little bit more sensible too. To
Okay.
understand that fractional reserve banking and how the dollar is actually kind of fiat. Imagine a hall of mirrors, a
Okay.
reflection going down infinitely of itself. And that's basically what happens. A dollar is printed, and then a dollar is loaned against the value of that dollar. And then a dollar is loaned against the value of that dollar and also
That's not
perhaps
one
of the
dollar.
initial dollar as well.
But it's not $1 that's loaned out here. You print $1, you store it in the bank. The bank loans out 10.
Yeah.
That's literally the ratio in the United States. The fact is, however, in the last year or so, that ratio has been allowed to go above 10, above 1 part in 10. It's now like 1 to 100 or 1
Which,
to 1,000.
interestingly enough, before we get back onto the specific topic, is
Yeah.
how much of the market has been played. You cannot influence the market so strongly unless you have the ability to make money out of nothing.
So the thing is, that money has to be paid back in order to eliminate those debts.
Oh, it does.
Otherwise, because this is a bubble. This is the same kind of situations with the stocks we talked about and the subprime mortgage stuff we talked about. The issue is that eventually that has to be paid back, and there's interest on the loans that are made with that extra stuff going out. That's kind of how the bank can justify having that kind of leverage on a single dollar coming in. So if the Fed sets the rate to zero, and then by law they're allowed to, the laws change to allow them, or policies change to allow them to break the 1 to 10 ratio, then there's no reason to not go above 1 to 10.
Well, yeah,
1 to
they've
100,
long
1 to a
since
thousand.
broken the social contract, and I mean they could give a fuck about an individual. So yeah, of course they're going to.
So the way that has played out is that the markets have been doing incredibly well this year, while inflation has also been picking up pace because of all the extra cash coming out, not just from government spending, but from the way that they've allowed that spending to be disseminated into the economy. The previous pristine dollars, if you will, the ones that are printed originally, aren't allowed to be set at a different ratio, so to speak. But the new dollars that come in, they can be adjusted by policy. That's the law. And so the policy changed and allowed us to, the rate was dropped lower, which was partly done last year to fuck with Trump on his way out. Right? Just remember, we basically doubled M0 last year, which is bad.
Yeah.
And so M1, which is kind of like the next layer of fiat growth, if you will. That's the next 1 in 10 layer, so to speak. When that picked up steam from that hit us with inflation earlier this year. That was bad, but that has not stopped for the rest of this year. More M0 has been accumulating this year.
No, they've only
More
just
M1.
announced rate hikes, which are desperately
Yeah.
needed. We
So
must
the
have
rate
rate hikes.
hikes, the high that interest rate slows down that is a disincentive for loaning out these debt dollars
Precisely.
because that is extra debt you have to pay back to cover that as a person who borrows cash. And so the Fed rate is between banks. So the banks don't want to get fucked by paying these things back. And then that is basically the basis rate for loans thereafter.
Well, that
So
is.
if you pick up a loan later on, it's going to be the Fed rate plus a little bit to give the banks some money to pay for things.
Oh, sure, sure. But I mean, to say them getting fucked by this would be more accurate to say them paying what they are due to pay.
Well, no, see, the problem is they make the money that they're going to pay with from the people who are paying back loans.
Indeed, they do. Banks are really kind of fuckers that way.
Well, it's kind of like saying if we tax the corporations and the rich more, then we'll have more money for the government to do whatever we want with, or the people at the bottom will be able to save some more money. It's like no, that's not how it works. They pass that cost onto the customer.
Indeed, they do. Indeed, they do. Which,
And if you look at there are a lot of small businesses have been posting up signs that say, our prices are going up by this percentage because of inflation to cover our costs. And
and
that's
that's
just the
just
way
a
it is.
basic necessity. It's really a basic necessity. I mean, where I work, we're having to pay what for a quart container. We're spending 25 cents per unit, where before it was something like 5.
Holy
And
shit.
yeah, so you can imagine a quarter per unit for a quart container at a takeout place is that adds up incredibly fast, especially
Yeah.
when I mean it's not even 100% increase. We're talking about a 500% increase on base price, and that's just
Well, I
one
mean,
item.
let's just say that you've at a takeout place you've provided 40 quarts of of stuff to whoever. That's a $10 uh, base cost on just the stuff to hold the product,
Yeah, on
the
just
packaging.
one item in the list of things necessary to make this all happen. Never
Right.
minding that we're paying more for chicken. Never minding that we're paying more for beef. Never minding that we're paying more
Right.
for shrimp. So it's
It's nuts.
it is. And another thing that I really have to kind of address here because it
Sure.
irks me, Jen Psaki going back, and this is some while ago, but basically everything she says irks me because she can't answer a question straight, and when she does, she
$5
lies.
sucky sucky has an opinion again.
No, no, this falls back onto the one with the addressing the supply chain issues as people can't get
Oh,
people can't get treadmills. It's like you awful woman. There is a chemical that's used in fertilizers that we can't get. Fertilizers
yeah.
that
You know
go
what?
into our fucking food.
Tell that Peloton princess to shut the fuck up.
I gladly would, sir. I gladly would.
God, she like people talk about privilege in this country. Holy fucking shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, you let Biden get one good sniff in there, and you feel like you're the queen of the damn earth.
Like it's that's one of those things where like you just kind of want like at some point you just kind of want her to be forced to be working with her hands in the dirt to make ends meet, like to actually have to grow her own fucking food.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine it would go the way the first season of Dual Sexes Survivor went, and someone
It'd
would step in and make it so that it wouldn't happen.
probably go about as well as Chaz went. There wouldn't be anything growing, and it would just look pathetic.
Oh yeah, and some people probably would end up dead too. Probably black people. Just saying. But
I felt bad for that kid. Like talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
yes, yeah, indeed. Oh, and since we're on the topic of queens and princesses here, did you hear what happened to Princess Lauren, the the Indian princess?
No, please do tell.
Oh, she's tested positive for the coof.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I saw that on the Twitters.
Yeah, yeah, she has.
For some reason, when you said Indian princess, I thought you might actually be talking about the continent.
No,
Sorry, subcontinent.
no, 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 not at all. Not at all. No, I
I
was.
think you know maybe something to do with the country of India instead of no
Well, I mean,
nothing so fancy. Just Miss Wampum,
well, I mean, she's probably. Well,
Miss Cow
I
Wow
mean,
Cow.
I'll put you a link in here if you want to check out the story. But
No,
there's
I got a pretty good idea how it went. Oh no, I got the COVID. I test every week, and this time it's positive.
well, she's very happy that she did get both her doses and her booster shot. So
Uh-huh.
she's very happy that that is there to make sure that it's not too bad.
Yeah, as if she has a control on that study to tell her exactly how effective that would be in her personal body.
Right. But
Well, it's like there's when people say trust the science, they don't actually say trust the science, do they? Otherwise, they'd be listening to actual scientists instead of just whatever agitprop comes out of that fucker's face in Congress.
hmm.
And I'm
Well,
talking about Tony,
oh, 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 yeah. He's
Mr. I'm the face of science. That fucking asshole.
that reminds me of something. If he is the science and the face of science, then why would he have called it the Wuhan type? It was the wild type and the alpha type. The only reason you'd call it the Wuhan type is because that's what they called it
The
in your
alpha
fucking
variant.
laboratory. Yeah, you would call it the alpha variant. You wouldn't call it unless that's what they called it in the goddamn lab that you sponsored and funded, then there's no reason why you would call it that. Just saying.
I'm
But
just
I've
waiting
got
at
an
this point.
update. Oh, incoming,
Remember?
incoming. It seems that Cory Booker, he's also got the coof, and he is
Oh God,
also,
I'm
in
so
his own
surprised.
words, beyond grateful to have received 2 doses of a vaccine and, more recently, a booster, which he says, I'm certain that without them I would be doing much worse.
You know what's funny to me? It almost sounds like Democrats are desperate to get the rest of their base to follow through on the vaccination they were against last year.
Oh, breaking now. Representative Jason Crow, Democrat out of Colorado, says he also
Uh,
has tested positive. He says he is
oh, but
thankful to be fully vaccinated and boosted and experiencing only mild symptoms.
oh my
The
God.
vaccine is safe and effective, quote unquote.
Yeah, I'm expecting the rest of Democrats in Congress at this point.
I mean, is it just a virtue
You know,
signal now?
I bet you it's gonna be. It's gonna be the next cachet thing.
And honestly, I don't wish death on him by way of COVID.
I don't wish death on them. I do wish significant suffering at this point. If
Yeah,
you're gonna be insufferable, you shouldn't expect suffering.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Well, they are.
I don't even wish death on the nuclear kid himself. The fart heard around the world. I just wish him to be completely impotent as people call him names the rest of life.
But that's 3 today. So, and they are
I'm not
all
surprised.
fully boosted and vaccinated. So, make that what you will, I suppose.
I expect that their whole entourage is probably all sick too. Probably came from the housemaid who probably went to a bar and saw their friend and their friend probably got it from their stripper.
Hmm. No, that's a possibility. Or,
The
from
curious thing would be is if they have the Omicron variant or not, because that would actually be very interesting. If people from Congress had the Omicron variant, that can spread much more easily, much
indeed it
more
can.
infectious.
It's absolutely true. Thankfully, as stated, it is our lucky star. So, they might be able to they might be able to thank Saint Fauci for his genius work in creating something that's so easily able to mutate. Oh, did I say that? Never mind that. I didn't say that.
Oh, so speaking on mutations, um, not that it has jack shit to do with this. So, not and this is I'm not paid for this in any way. I want to make that clear. I'm a satisfied customer.
Sure, sure.
The new Louis C.K. special came out just recently.
Oh,
It's $10 on his website, and you get a direct digital download, so you get a file.
holy shit! He's actually
I got
trending
a
on
I got
Twitter
an
right now
MP
too.
I got an MP4 file that I could play on my own fucking computer, which is one of the things I love about that because that is there's no DRM, there's no streaming service requirement, even though you can stream it on his website for a year. I just got a fucking file. I watched the video on my computer. I got the file for the rest of my life.
Okay, that's
Like I
that's
can
the way you do it. I mean,
right.
that's really
That
the way you
is
do it.
that's the way that I can try. I could have tried before buy on the seven proxies if I wanted to. For the comedy that I was able to experience, I would have easily bought it right after that too. I'm glad I paid for it up front because I was just like, I want to see it.
Well, the thing about it
But yeah,
is, I mean, if we look at the hard and fast numbers,
it's straightforward.
piracy
Yeah.
helps media.
Oh, it does absolutely,
I mean, because
but
you've
it
got a
kills the
segment
secondary
of
markets.
oh, it absolutely certainly does, certainly does. Because I mean, why are you going to go for used when you can just get a copy that's right there, perfect?
Right.
Now there is, depending on how you're doing things,
Then
there
again,
is always
digital
that.
streaming services also kill secondary markets, so we shouldn't be,
Yeah, there's that as
too
well.
smart
Because I
here.
mean, looking at it, DVDs aren't exactly a collector's item, but VHS, absolutely.
Well, DVDs will have their time. The same way that people didn't think game carts were going to be a collectible. And now you can find Pokemon regularly going for like $100, $200.
Yeah, retro gaming is big. It really is.
Yeah, like I got a room in this house that's just got a bunch of games sitting on shelves. Like just from NES onward.
Now you know those games are meant to be played.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I just linked something up here, and it. Have you had a chance to look at this? Basically, talking about how the modeling that was done for COVID variants was basically done to look for done in the same way that climate science is done. To look for the worst possible outcomes and exclude, you know, things like exactly what we're dealing with here, with a possibility that we could end up with a variant that's highly communicable and highly tolerable as well.
Hmm.
But a good analogy here is,
Also, here's one of the things that is the case here. This is always going to be the case. This is one of the reasons why I look at the Working Group One publications and I stop after that because it's just even in their work, the preface, the summary chapters, it's all garbage. It's because it's written for policymakers at that point, and policymakers are not looking for difficult choices. They want you, the scientist, to do the difficult choosing for them. Speaking from experience, that's a really frustrating thing to deal with.
oh, I can believe that.
It comes from the funding side of things too, where how do you get the funding? Well, before you funnel in on the specifics of what you actually want to do, you have to use the buzzwords that get the right attention. Really, it makes you feel like shit when you do it, as it should, frankly.
Yeah, you shouldn't feel good about being a whore.
You know, over time, you're the that becomes numb, like other whores.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's said you
You
become
widen
numb
out
to
a little
killing
bit,
after a
it's
time,
things
even.
slide in easier. The
Well,
dip goes a little bit deeper over time, and eventually it touches your soul, and then it leaves.
yeah, live a
Oh
greasy
man.
life, and you'll be a greasy person. That's just kind of how that works out. But yeah, I mean,
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the bullshit that I see in this is where he says you omit just as likely outcomes. The problem is they aren't just as likely necessarily. They're just not modeled, so you have no idea how likely they are.
well, I mean that in and of itself though speaks to the
Well, that should tell you that
incompetence.
there's a problem there. When you start talking about like, it's just not to denigrate the person who brings that up as a point because it still speaks to the same problem. There's a lack of information. There's an intention. So I distinguish between ignorance and stupidity, and that stupidity requires willful ignorance. You have to choose to remain ignorant of something to be stupid. If you make a bad decision and you go, oh, well, I'm just going to ignore how bad the outcome was the last time and make that decision again, because that's when you become stupid. Uh, Whereas ignorant is just, oh, I don't know. That is faultless, in my opinion. That's an innocence.
Well,
Stupidity requires the malice of intention.
ignorant is maybe not the
There's
best
other
choice of words.
there's other connotations for it, sure, but then when we're talking about the outcome here, there's innocent ignorance, and then there's ignorance with intention, willful intentional ignorance, and that is stupidity.
Well, or
And
malice.
so, and that's what I'm saying here, is that there's willful intentional ignorance that's coming out of this, where this person says just as likely.
Well, no, I shouldn't say or
That is
malice.
their that is their
Also
ignorance,
it could also be greed.
but it's willful intentional ignorance is the thing here. That's the stupidity side of it. This person saying omit just as likely. They're not the one who's being willfully ignorant here. It's those who are not choosing to commit any of the modeling time to models that could be just as likely. They don't know how likely they are because they haven't done the fucking modeling.
Absolutely. Well, this comes back to the climate science that we've talked so much about.
Well, that they're worse at that. I mean, you could say yeah, some of the same kind of fiddle fuckery is going around here, but
Well, yeah, no, I
I'd
don't.
say
I don't
that
mean the studies. I just mean the
has
same kind of
climate science
bullshittery.
has their grift. Climate science has their grift down to a science. So just put it like that.
Oh, most certainly they do. They've got it down to a fucking actual grift. You can buy climate bucks now. Fucking carbon
You see,
offsets.
that's the company. That's the kind of company to get into. And that's the kind of company like if it wasn't for the fact that I would run it as if it was a fraud scheme, I would fucking do it yesterday.
Well,
Selling carbon offsets.
funny you
Like
mentioned fraud
I'll
scheme.
just put IOUs into a vault somewhere. Well, this many tons of carbon was saved by this many dollars into the vault, and then here's the dollars. Fuck the carbon.
Yeah, and how much carbon was used to create those dollars?
It's
Not
just
important.
it's guilt. It's guilt grievances. It's fucking 16th century indulgences.
It is exactly that. It is a payment to the Church of Science. A tithe, if you
That's,
like.
see, I would say scientism or I mean Scientology. Quite frankly, wouldn't be that far off.
Yeah, but
I would
that
say
one's already
Church
been
of
taken.
Scientism because the Church of Science. I think that's a bad way to put it because that's what pisses me off is they keep bringing in the word science and they mean like scientism.
Yeah.
I mean the scientism people. That's the other problem is you can't call them scientists anymore, can you?
Oh, yeah, far from it.
Well, scientism, the membership of scientism would be scientists, and that doesn't work out properly because none of the people advocating scientism are scientists, except for the priests among it, and those people aren't really scientists either. They're jackasses who sit there in a white coat and go, "Ah, oh, no, I didn't fund any gain of function research over in Wuhan. Fuck that asshole.
Oh, on that
Fuck him,
specific
fuck him, and
note,
everybody associated with him."
on that exact and specific note, we've got some releases that just came out where part of the Fauci emails were talking about the Barrington Declaration. He called
Uh huh.
out to a lot of folks and made a lot of calls. His specific words: there needs to be a quick and devastating takedown. So it it's tiresome. Basically, Fauci and Collins, the NIH director, were coordinating to try and basically shut this up, and they basically did. I mean, they called out to their people at Twitter, Facebook, in media,
Yep.
and yeah, this was in
You know what makes me happy
October
about
last
all
year.
this? At the end of it, it's a really shitty consolation prize. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes for the Fauci documentary is still 2%.
Oh, that's good.
The
Small
the
victories.
tomato meter is still says 85% out of 41 reviews. On IMDb, 88.6% of the reviews on there still won.
I'll bet you there's a great story that was never told that got better reviews than that.
Well, it's the funny thing is, a lot of the reviews that are low for the Fauci docu are people who wanted to get something new about a guy they liked
Ooh,
to reveal
oh,
more
that's
of the
even
more human
worse.
about him. And then they didn't get it, and they're pissed, and they're calling it propaganda. They're not happy about it,
Oh,
and it's
wow.
hilarious to me how they got blowback because everyone knew it was going to be propaganda coming out, but all the people that liked him thought they were still going to get something out of it, and they didn't get it. Which should
Oh
tell you
man.
exactly how fucking hollow this guy is.
Well, I guess all I can say to that is that's about the biggest oof I've got to give right there. Perhaps even a yikes. Oh
Oh,
my.
so speaking of yikes,
Yeah.
you see that New York is
I know where you're going.
providing for
I know where
indefinite
we'd all be
detention of
going.
unvaccinated providing for indefinite detention of unvaccinated at governor's whim.
Ah, yes indeed. That's just come to light basically.
Yeah. Um, I'm sorry here, but I'm pro-vaccine, not pro Auschwitz.
Yeah,
Like, how
that's
the fuck are they gonna? How the fuck are you gonna go down that road? Like, I
Well,
have
I don't know
like
if you'd
I've said
call it a
before.
road.
I have a
It's more
real
of
hard
like a
time.
it's more like a set of train tracks. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I've said this before. I have a real hard time making those kind of comparisons because the Holocaust was pretty fucking bad, and
Well, it all starts with people following
joke
orders.
joke
Just
as
following
joke
orders.
as you wish, joke as you wish about the Jew getting upset about it here, but at the same time, like I get how bad that was and the watering down of true tragedies in history. Kind of like saying that the Xinjiang is just as bad as American slavery when really it's more of a combination of American slavery and the Holocaust. They have concentration camps and happy people picking cotton. So
Indeed. Well, not only
when
that, they
when it
don't
comes to
really
shit
have
like
anybody
this in New
working to
York,
try and free them in country
when it
either.
comes to shit like this in New York, like the whole Yellow Star thing, like that dipshit in Tennessee with selling the Yellow Stars, like that was fucking dumb. Like it was her right to be fucking dumb, but that was fucking dumb. With this, I mean, we're talking about interning people.
Literal concentration camps.
And we can even if you want to make the distinction here, we could say, okay, fine, they aren't concentration camps because we're not dragging a class of people from around the area to a single location for processing in something else. We're only interning them briefly because of some exigent scenario. Fine. Internment camps. That's just what we did to the Japanese during World War II, without cause. That was equally bad. Like that was like we've acknowledged how bad that is, and we've seen over the past year or two, we've seen dipshits like what the fuck's his name, the Star Trek guy, uh,
Oh,
who, who's who literally was in a fucking Japanese internment camp with his parents, mind you,
Leonard?
saying we need to bring
No,
that
that's
shit back.
Nimoy. Yeah, I know who you're talking about though. The Asian dude.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been
So
really upset about things for a while, and then
like
when Shatner
it's
when Shatner got to go to space, man, that just utterly
yeah,
broke
that
him.
was that was
That was like
he
the
was
line.
unhinged on that.
He's
That
gone
that
off the
was
deep end.
hilarious. It was hilarious. He was unhinged on that. Yeah, it's the older and slightly gayer version of Ted Lieu.
Yeah, I mean, it's the oh my guy, and I cannot for the life of me remember his name right now.
Well, that's what that tip of the tongue did for everybody,
Well,
everyone listening right now. Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna look it up so I don't have to be upset
George
about it
Takei.
too. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was doing.
My mind went to Ted Lieu, and I knew exactly that it wasn't him, and I still said it anyway because that would be. I just I know it's not him, but it's like an older and slightly gayer version of him,
Slightly.
slightly. Pretty sure that if Ted Lieu has a woman in his life, it's only to help him pick out another man.
Well, I mean, Asian men can't. Asian men have trouble growing their own beards, so Yeah, that's a good one, right?
Hey, trust the science and find your bearded lady, Ted.
There you go. There you go. Oh my, what a good time! What a good time in which we find ourselves to live.
Oh yeah, the harvest is strong here.
But falling back on Omicron, it appears that it.
Sure.
I mean, this is just kind of tangential, but it looks like it has a European origin. So I've been discussing this with some
Possibly.
people. So it would. Well, no, it appears it came from a traveler who had come out of Europe. That seems to be the patient zero out of South Africa.
So here's the funny thing: is in South Africa, um, one of the things they've kind of determined as a possibility for the way that the vector arose is that it might have been somebody who had AIDS.
It is a possibility.
That the somebody who had AIDS, or at least or several persons who had AIDS, might have been the incubators for this as it developed as a new variant
It
because
might,
of the unchecked replication within their bodies. And therefore in the lack of immune system, meaning a lack of visible disease external to their body. It
well,
might have been that they were actively spreading new proto variants, as you will, and then this was the outcome was because if you look at the clades and in the genetic epidemiology of it, like it doesn't it's not an outshoot of any of the recent variants at all. Here, I'll drop a link here for you to see.
Oh, sure. But I just mentioned this specifically because it looks like
Right.
this was in where was this? The Netherlands, a week before it was out in before it reached South Africa.
And that's entirely possible. But again, so this is where we discussed it previously, where it was interesting that from a region that has, and this has been discussion elsewhere, that for a region that has such and such vaccination rates and such rates of transmission and transmissibility, given different rates of mobility in the population. So it is interesting, that it could possibly come from Netherlands.
And I mean, that would be from
And
a
again,
fairly highly vaccinated society, which
and
would
again,
lend rise to the idea that, we've got some of these.
well, it'd have to be in someone who is immunocompromised for it to be in such a highly, if it was in such a highly selected against environment, if it was an early on variant that was covered by the vaccine in a sterilizing immunity sort of sense, it would have to be in someone who was not capable of being vaccinated or who got vaccinated and did not develop immunity due to a lack of immune function. It stands to reason that it could have been someone who was immunocompromised. That would and it does you don't have to have AIDS to be immunocompromised.
Oh,
Here
no,
in this,
no, no, no. There's any number of ways. I
but
mean, it could just be by
but
way of the medicine you're taking at any given time.
so but it would make more sense that it was someone who had a complete lack of a response to the disease for it to replicate in a manner that would just provide the kind of mutation breadth that you see in this variant. So the plot that I showed you there, the vertical axis is the S1 mutations, and Omicron just has a fuck ton of mutations relative to the rest of them.
Now, you want to know what's
30.
really, I just thought of something, and it's incredibly ironic. If they had gone ahead and given this the Chi emblem, right now she could be like, oh, I have gifted the world with the weakest strain so that we can all become healthy once more. But no. Oh, he could have owned it and been like, no, I've given this gift to you. But no.
No. We did not have the Shinny Jinpu variant.
No, indeed we don't. We have Omicron.
God, that would have been funny.
Oh man, you know how many strings they had to pull to make that not happen. Well, about as many as they pulled initially. Yeah.
One, all they had to do was say, Tedros, we pay you.
What an awful
Tedros
man.
Ghebreyesus.
What a truly awful man.
If there's someone who needs to go to The Hague, it's Tedros. If there's someone who needs to be his butt buddy in prison, it's fucking Fauci.
They both absolutely. There can be no denial that these people have violated the Nuremberg codes. There can be no denial.
Well, just look at their history with AIDS and with epidemics and what was it? It's Nigeria, right? Look at the way that they both fucked up epidemics and made them worse and tried to cover up their actions in doing so, and how they failed upwards doing so.
Well, Tedros is one thing, but Fauci is disgusting. He has fucked up everything, and he's somehow managed to ingratiate himself into the communities that he fucked up. Which, it bothers me on a personal level, the amount of evil this man has done in the world. Like, it really does.
Again, like when it comes to Fauci in his position, my goal with that guy is to do the least harm for the rest of the country and for the rest of the planet, frankly, with him. Just getting him fired would be so huge. Like, forget the jail and all that other shit. Just getting him.
Oh yeah, for the love of God, get him away from power. Just that.
That's all I need.
Just
That's
stop
all
him
I
from
require.
hurting more people, for fuck's sake.
It's all I require to feel better about the situation is just to get him out of his fucking seat. Let someone else warm it for a decade, you know? He needs to be out of NIAID, out of NIH. He needs to no longer be in charge of funding, because that's why a lot of people do
Yeah,
not
that's how
criticize him.
Dazak's money got involved.
A lot of people have not been criticizing this man because he controls NIH funding, which is so. For instance, like I was on an SBIR a while back. I was subcontracted into it, and that was through NIH, and had anybody involved. And thankfully, this shit wasn't going on. This is from like 5 or 6 years ago. Had any of this stuff been going on then, and had any of us been like saying shit about Fauci, it could have been the case that had the wrong person, the wrong prick, gotten that in their ears and taken the wrong memo to the wrong person, that the money could have been cut off somehow. Or, we could have just never gotten a round of funding again, even though, like, later on we got approved for a phase 2 trial.
No, I absolutely
Like,
believe that.
a phase 2 trial could have not happened because of that. And again, like, it's only one guy here, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that work on grants by NIH. So it's not likely that it would happen, but, like, it could happen is the issue. And the business politics of that are pretty powerful at play here. You don't want to piss off the guy handing you the check.
Absolutely not.
So a guy like him, who has routine fuck-ups in his life, in his professional career, like, you don't want that kind of person to be in charge of the cash button.
No, you can
Especially given
best
his proven narcissism.
Yeah. He is a bad human being. Like, he is a villain. Maybe not a Bond villain, but at the very
He's
least,
not a Bond villain. He is a classic fuck up who has a fragile ego, and you can see it every time he's challenged in Congress. And I can understand that there is a certain degree of animus he's going to hold, because there's no doubt in my mind that he's getting bombarded at home. He's probably getting phone calls and letters and all kinds of heinous shit sent his way. A lot of which is, keep in mind, like, you can't really pick and choose which to take seriously when it comes to death threats, which sucks. I get it. At the same time, he's out in public making these asinine comments, lying to the American people to their faces, saying he's not on a technicality, admitting later that it was a technicality, and then continuing to double down and triple down on his lies again. This guy is not a good guy, and it doesn't matter what kind of pressure he's under. Like, his actions in the past are the problem here. It's not like he's making these new decisions given the pressure. The pressure is a result of how shitty he is as a person.
absolutely.
I'm glad right now it's all on open display again, mind you. This shit came after him back in the 80s with AIDS as well. In the 90s, when a lot of his crap came out, well, I suppose that's not really best phrasing given the way he was talking about AIDS at the time. But in the 90s, when a lot of his problems came to light, from the way he was trying to handle AIDS, only gay people can get it because only they fuck each other in the ass, etc. Only anal tears can transmit the disease.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, that's
Right.
not.
It sounds
That's bad
stupid.
science. And
It's
also then,
non-science.
well, he was also the same kind of person that was like, oh no, you can spread it by, like, touching people or being around people. That was also him. So the same thing as, like,
Yeah.
wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Wear 2 masks.
Yeah, he's not the kind of person you want in charge of policy. He's not the kind of person who can understand and digest properly the science.
I would rather
being
Martin
done.
Shkreli have been in his position this whole time.
God. Yeah, Shkreli would make masks $1,500 a piece.
And there we go, problem solved.
That would be funny. That would be funny, though. Become a fucking family heirloom at that point.
I mean, he'd do a better job of it. I can guarantee goddamn to you that.
This is true. I think so. a monkey doing nothing would also be doing a better job.
That's true. That's true. A
I'd be
rock.
I'd be very mad at that monkey, but at least that fucker would not be doing anything to actively harm American citizens.
Oh, on that note, did you hear about all the evidence that went missing from Epstein's place after the
Oh,
FBI raid?
from the Epstein vault, yeah, it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, that's so weird how that just happens every single fucking time.
Yeah, it's almost like someone's actively fucking something up there, huh? Kind of like in those videos, all the video cameras decided to fail conveniently at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not like, you would have, I don't know, somebody in intelligence have their kid prosecute the case or something like that. I mean, that wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, how about that?
All right, so we got like 3 minutes left here
Oh, do we? Do we? Okay, well,
before I turn into a pumpkin. Yeah,
yeah, can't have you turn it into a pumpkin. Was there anything else you were wanting to cover tonight?
I can guarantee it, but we're not going to get to it.
Fair enough.
I am not off the top of my head.
Understandable. Understandable. All right. Well, then let's close out with a little bit of good news. Also bad news, but we're up to
Uh-huh.
3 out of CNN that have, if not been
Oh
directly
my god.
exposed as having been involved with little girls, as wanting to be. So things are looking really ugly at a really ugly
That was
organization.
something I was going to bring up. Was
So,
Project Veritas had that one woman come in.
yeah.
That was disturbing. I would recommend if you haven't listened to her
Yeah, you won't be able to find
to
it
go
on
watch
Twitter
that.
because it got taken down there, but do look it up on
Oh
YouTube.
man, yeah, I watched it. It's her story, her account is pretty harrowing. I just it's the kind of shit that makes you afraid to become a parent.
It does. Certainly more harrowing than being the vice president and having Charlemagne the God ask you if you actually are. And then getting so fucking
Holy
pissed
shit!
off that you have to be
She
like,
said, "And
listen,
my
God
name
damn it,
is."
I am the vice president and my name is Kamala Harris.
I love that part. He's the president. He's Biden. He's Joe Biden. And by the way, I'm the vice president. I'm Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
I'm surprised like she didn't use her middle initial or her middle name to really hammer that one home. Like
yeah.
that was hilarious. This queen bitchy behavior. It's like, look, nobody cared what your name was. We know who the fuck you are. You're the one talking, dumbass.
Or well, yeah, we could do a Bane quote here, but I mean it doesn't really sound good
Right.
when it's like nobody knew who I was until I put the penis in my mouth. So, yeah, that just doesn't ring the same, when you're talking about Kamala. So,
Yeah, he merely adopted the penis. I was born around it,
yeah,
molded by it.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'd say that is a really apt description of Kamala. And what a great way to close out the night. So, everybody, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you again
Yes,
soon.
Merry Christmas.
And, well, I'll let you out of here, brother. I'm going to go ahead and just do the
Okay.
closeout, give everybody the
Well, I'll
links and stuff.
give you the brief inside baseball summary here for me, just on the way out. I will be on vacation starting Christmas through the second. So it'll be next year when I'll be able to come back on. Potentially, I might be able to do something while I'm on vacation, but I'll be with family, as you might imagine. So little kids around, I might not be able to do a show.
Oh, sure. I'm going to try and put something together.
Yeah,
But if you can't make it, that's fine. I'm going to try and at least put
yeah,
something together just so that people can have something cool for like day after Christmas or
yeah.
something.
Okay.
But either way,
Well,
for you, sir, happy Hanukkah.
thank you. Merry Christmas.
Absolutely, sir. Be well. You can find him at CraigBob99 most places. You can find me at that fake guy Dan, also most places. Certainly not Facebook, because that place is fucking strange. And, well, look for us everywhere. If you're not checking this out on YouTube or Odyssey, definitely check me out on Odyssey. I'm really liking the platform. I'm almost up to current. By the time Christmas hits, we'll be running these 1-to-1. Although I don't have an automatic backup there, so everything's got to get uploaded separately. It is what it is. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. We unfortunately did not get a Steve, but he'll be back soon to probably give us an update on the horror show that is the upcoming garbage in New York. So, with that said, everyone be well, be safe, have a merry whatever you're having, and we'll talk to you again soon.